Greetings everyone, Baldus here. In this video, I'm going to take you through an endgame build guide for Druid. One that should crush high level dungeons, which will most likely be the majority of the endgame. I'm going to run through the gear, including legendary aspects, the skills, and the spirit boons. Then the skill tree and passives, and then finally the Paragon Board. Let's start with the skill tree. For the generator, we want to take Wind Shear. It's by far the best one out of the bunch because it's a ranged skill to start with. It applies vulnerability and it also pierces enemies and gains additional spirit. I know a lot of people like to use Storm Strike, but I just don't think it's as good. Yes, the DR is nice, but it's just a clunky skill. It's melee range and Wind Shear is just better. So next we want to move on to these nodes, this cluster here, which is good for spirit. So we've got Heart of the Wild for max spirit. We've got Wild Impulse. This makes the core skill cost more, but deals 15% more damage. And then you've also got Abundance, which just makes Wind Shear generate more spirit. Obviously we're going to take Pulverize and the Overpower node, and also the Stun node, which helps to synergize with crowd control. We're also going to pick up critical strike chance against close enemies, giving us another 6%. And then we're going to take Earthen Bulwark. We only need 1 point in the initial skill because it doesn't actually scale that well, so it'll be a waste of points. You want to take it for the Unstoppable, and then the Fortify. Next, we'll take another defensive skill, Debilitating Roar. It reduces the damage dealt by nearby enemies by 70%, gives us more Fortify, and it also slows enemies, giving us more CC uptime. Then move on and take this small node, Nature's Reach, which gives us more damage against distant enemies. The reason we want this is that the Pulverized legendary, the shockwave hits things way off the screen. So it's not only hitting close enemies, so we want to take a bit more damage for the distant ones. The damage is also doubled versus CC'd enemies. Next we want to come down, take Trample. Trample's just another good skill. High damage burst and mobility, and it also CCs and grants us Fortify. Then we want to take these Earth passives that give us more damage versus CC'd enemies. More damage while Fortifies above 50%, which will be pretty much all the time. And then just 2 points in this one, giving us a bit more Fortify chance. Next we move on to these passives. These are all based around nature damage, which now Pulverize is an earth skill, so it's classed as a nature skill as well. So we do more damage against elites, more damage against vulnerable. Wind Shear also benefits from that as well. This is an important one, which also synergizes with Wind Shear because it's a storm skill. We gain 6% increased damage for the earth skills, but it's tripled if it's used after a storm skill. So for example, if you're just generating on Wind Shear and then you do a Pulverize hit, you're going to get triple the bonus, so 18%. For the ultimate, we're going to take Grizzly Rage. It's a very nice one for this build because it gives us 20% bonus damage and 20% damage reduction for the duration. Then you get 3% more damage for each second while in this form. Kills then also extend the duration by 1 second up to 10 seconds. Also gives us Unstoppable while active and Fortify every second. We also can take this passive, Quick Shift, which gives us another 15% damage when we transform to do our Pulverize. For the Keystone passives, you could either go for Earth Sign Strength, which just gives us pretty much a flat damage buff to Pulverize, because it increases the overpower damage due to the health, and then also damage while healthy. But for me, I'm going to try and go for Earthen Might. I just think it has a bit more potential when synergizing with a lot of the other legendaries. because it can guarantee critical strikes, and we're going to be stacking a lot of critical damage in this build. So now moving on from the skill tree, let's look at the legendaries. For the helmet, we're going to take this one, where you gain +2 ranks to your earth skills when you are fortified. This should be up pretty much all the time. I haven't done this for this build, but there is uniques that are pretty significant. Although I don't know how rare they are, so I'm not going to put them in the build. For example, we have Harlequin Crest here that gives us up to 20% flat damage reduction and gain +4 ranks to all skills. So obviously, if you were to get this unique, you would put it in place of that legendary. For the chest armor, we're going to take Aspect of the Crowded Sage. This legendary is great for keeping our health always at max, as we heal life per second for each close enemy. So whenever we're going through dungeons or strongholds with high mod density, we're going to always be at 100% health, making sure those overpowers always hit as hard as they can. For the chest armor, if you get lucky enough to drop this unique Insatiable Fury, you would swap that in. It makes your werebear form now your true form, and you gain +2 ranks to all werebear skills. Additionally, if you were to get this unique, you would get rid of these 3 passives, as they would no longer benefit you, as you're no longer shapeshifting because you're permanently in werebear. You would go and spend them somewhere else, maybe get that passive, you know, get some fortified generation or something like that. Moving on to the gloves, we're going to take Aspect of the Ursine Horror. This is the one that converts Pulverize to an Earth skill, and also creates a small AoE aftershock effect, which damages enemies a couple of times. For the pants, we'll take Aspect of the Mending Stone. This increases the duration of Earthen Bulwark by 6 seconds, and also replenishes the barrier when you kill an enemy. This pretty much guarantees Earthen Bulwark to be up 100% of the time, increasing your survivability a lot. Then for the boots, we've got Aspect of the Quicksand. This causes enemies damaged by our earth skills to be slowed, providing a consistent crowd control effect. Now for the weapon, of course we're going to take the Shockwave Aspect. The tooltip is wrong here, but it does say it will be increased by 100%. So we're actually looking at 260% damage on the Shockwave. Now for the amulet, we're going to take the Crash Stone Aspect, which makes earth skills deal 40 to 50% more critical damage to crowd control enemies. Now if we link this back to the boots, we're going to be slowing enemies from damage with earth skills, applying a crowd control effect. So we're almost guaranteeing this to be up 100% of the time. Another thing to note is that the tooltip says more critical damage and not increased. This means that 50% isn't added on to our current critical damage, it's timesing our critical damage. So because we've got this on the amulet, it's actually going to be 50% more. So we're going to bring that up to 75%. So let's say if we have 300% critical damage, we're going to times it by 1.75, giving us 525%. For the first ring, take Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast. This increases the duration of Grisly Rage by a flat amount, but then also makes critical strikes while active increase our critical strike damage by 10%. So what that means is every time we critically strike an enemy, which could be multiple enemies all at once, so you could get 20 crits in a single hit, which means our critical strike damage will go up to 200%. I mean, that is a big damage increase, and potentially could it even be multiplied by this that we talked about just a bit earlier. We're yet to find out exactly what gets calculated first and after, so we'd have to actually see it for the real thing. But if that is the case, then we could be reaching thousands of critical strike damage. Finally, for the last ring, we can take this just for flat damage increase, so we gain 40% increased damage. You could also take Rapid Aspect. if you want to get a bit more spirit generation from your auto attacks. Now let's move on to spirit boons. So if you didn't already know, spirit boons are Druid's class unique kind of speciality. We didn't get access to them in the beta, so I don't exactly know how it's going to work, but if you did play the beta, you would have seen we were dropping these Druid jars that we would need to go and hand in. Anyway, we have deer, eagle, wolf, and snake. So for the deer, we will take Gift of the Stag, giving us 10 maximum spirit. This just allows us to bash a few more pulverizers off in a row. Nothing too crazy. For the eagle, we take Iron Feather, which gives us 10% more maximum life. This is just a great flat damage buff for our overpower. For wolf, we take Calamity, which extends the duration of our ultimate skills. Grizzly Rage is our ultimate skill, so we get longer duration, which also links to this legendary, which gives us more critical strike damage for the duration. So the longer it goes on, the more damage we're going to do. Finally, for the snake, we're going to take Obsidian Slam, which is the best node out of all of the spirit boons because it gives a guaranteed overpower every 10th kill. Because our skill is an earth skill now, Pulverize also fits into that. So if you imagine going through a dungeon, you're going to be killing multiple enemies constantly, so pretty much every slam could be an overpower. The next one, we take Calm Before the Storm. Nature magic skills have up to a 50% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds. Yet again, another synergy for Grizzly Rage and the legendary. Right, so now to move on to the Paragon Board. Now, if you haven't seen this before, don't be overwhelmed, it isn't as complicated as it looks. Basically, you just start at the starting tile, and then you take the small passives, which are usually just basic stats like willpower, strength, dexterity, or intelligence. And then you'll move towards these magic nodes, which then will surround a rare node. Just before we move on, you should get 4 Paragon points per level after level 50, and you can also obtain some through renown and other means. As far as the rare nodes go, they have a stat check for a bonus upgrade. For example, for this one, you've got 160 intelligence as the requirement, and the bonus gives you 10% more damage. So in total, this node alone would give me 20% more damage and 4% life. Additionally, on these boards, you have these glyph slots. I chose the Werebear glyph, which gives you 2% increased damage while in Werebear form for every 5 willpower you take. So the red zone indicates the area, and you've got to take stat nodes in the area. So for this one, I've got a total of 40 willpower, so I can meet the additional bonus to get the 10% damage reduction. So in total, I've got 40 willpower, giving me 16% increased damage in Werebear form. I'm not going to go through every node in this video, but there will be a link in the description of the whole build for you guys to go onto and look in your own time. Moving on to the next board, and also how you unlock these boards, is you go to the board attachment gate and you take one of these legendary nodes depending on the build it suits. For this build and the first board, I chose Survival Instincts, which pretty much acts like an execute while we're in Werebear form. Just to note, you can also rotate these boards if you want to go down a different path. Okay, so for this board and the glyph, we want to take Undaunted, which increases our fortified damage for every 5 intelligence purchased within range. So you just pick up your intelligence runes, and obviously willpower as well, because we need that as our main stat. And then for the rest of the board, we've got other key nodes that you want to take that just increase damage and help for survivability. So moving on to the next board, the key legendary node is this one, Ancestral Guidance. So when we spend 75 spirit, deal 30% increased damage for 5 seconds. This should have good uptime, as we will always be spending a lot of spirit. Other nodes on here include healing, maximum spirit, and spirit on kill, which is pretty nice. But overall, this board doesn't offer that much, so we'll move on to the next one. The next one is based around Earthen Devastation, which gives Earth skills increased damage enemies afflicted by crowd control. For the glyph on this board, we take Dominate, which increases our overpowered damage by 6% per 5 intelligence spent in the range. So in this range, we're spending 44 intelligence. So we have 8 times 6, which is 48% increased overpower damage. We also have these other nodes that increase critical damage with Earth skills. Moving on to the final board, where we take this legendary node, Constricting Tendrils, which gives 15% chance to entangle the enemy in vines, immobilizing them and poisoning them. We really take this just so we have more crowd control effects to gain our critical damage bonuses. The other nodes in this board are pretty good as well. So we've got more damage to crowd control and life, quite a bit of life and crowd control to enemies. Some more damage, more nature damage, more life, quite a bit more life, which is all good damage. So there we have it. Probably one of the best builds for dungeon clearing in the game. Remember, there is a link to the full build in the description, so take a look if you're interested, and please like and subscribe if you found the video useful. I will also be streaming Diablo 4 on Twitch at Baldus Maximus. Feel free to come and say hi and ask any questions about Druid.